Downloading. Program activated.
Every interaction has three possibilities. It either moves a relationship forward, keeps a relationship in the same place, or it moves a relationship backward.
Thank you for downloading the Fitbox Fizzy Call podcast. This week my guest was Mr. Keith Smith. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
I started teaching classes in about 1989 as a favour for someone, and then around 92 thought I better get qualified in this because I don't know that much. So I went to do a qualification. I was so nervous about doing a qualification, I ended up doing a 1 evening a week course for 6 months before my assessment, where most people who entered the industry, the fitness industry at that time, did what was called a 2-week intensive. I got through that and was given an opportunity to work voluntarily at the YMCA club in central London. Over that couple of years, picked up a bit of work in various gyms in and around London. And then
When you say classes, what classes were you teaching?
If the truth be known, Paul, it was probably what people would call now a bog standard circuit, mostly body weight, with using a couple of benches and mats. And I used to teach on a Friday night between 6:30 and 7:15. It was, for all intensive purposes, a bog standard circuit.
The qualification would have made a difference, but you were teaching for 3 years before that. Where did you get the content for your classes previously? What was your experience as an exerciser or a fitnesser at that point?
So I suppose I'm going to contradict myself at some point during this session. To give where I am now in the industry, I am very clear about what I do and how I do it, in terms of I am a trainer or a tutor who is passionate about the general population. Okay? And I know this is going a long way around it. And by general population, I mean an individual of adult age who leads a very busy life, has other things that they enjoy in their life, but feels that they need to commit to some sort of activity, maybe once or twice a week, and would like to do that activity in a facility. And I am very passionate about that. That's the client group that I read around. When I do my reading, that's who I try and reason with the information in my head. If I do any form of CPD, that is the client group that I try and reason with. That's my context. And I tell people that I hate sport. But actually, to answer your question, where did my understanding of exercises, exercise choice, exercise order, and exercise intensity, from about the age of 14 to around the age of 22, I competed in a sport. And the dedication that I gave it was quite large. When I say that I was probably towards the end training twice a day. I do have a background, and I consider my education in sport and the people that gave me that education to have a great understanding in how a training session should be structured, in terms of warm-up, in terms of skill acquisition, in terms of conditioning, and then in terms of cooling down and ending a session. So that was a very long way round in terms of answering your question.
No, I like the long way round, and I
detest sport now, but I suppose to answer your question, I had to give it a context.
But that is part sport is part of your ingredients, isn't it?
Well, many years ago, it was in a different life. Now I often forget about it. Yeah, I mean, it was only the other day that we were getting Christmas decorations out of the loft, and all the suitcases and boxes that contain all that past memorabilia, I had to move to get the Christmas decorations out. So it was in a past life. I can't even, a long time ago.
So the experience of that, gave you an understanding of structuring a training session, I suppose, because your experience would have been a training session rather than a workout. And
Yes.
when you started to teach classes for people that are outside of that sporting environment, how did you, or what informed the decisions you made in terms of content, or was it very heavily athletic based?
No, that's a lovely question. Actually, I would probably cringe now if I went to one of my original classes in terms of exercise choice, and maybe exercise order. But it was always drilled into us from a very early age that a good structured preparation and a structured way to end the session. So I was always brought up around the element of safety, whether my content in the main workout, whether I could justify the content in the main workout as I can these days would be debatable.
It would have been so. I know how much thought you put into content, so I can see why you'd arrive at that. But would it be fair to assume that though you might, with the benefit of hindsight, reorder or reselect some of the exercises that you put in, but they would have been there because they did a job and you understood what job they did. And I'm going to use one of your words, which is one of my favourites. There wouldn't have been any bumfluffery.
No, no, there wouldn't have been any bum fluffery. Circuit training was a vital part of what we did back then, and I was very privileged in those early days, and I was exposed to a whole range of different training approaches from continuous interval and both fartlek training, and I knew about all of those and how to structure them and what the outcome was of those. I always knew when to use them and how to use them, even if it wasn't in a scientific way, but it was in a more practical way. Yeah. But some of the exercises that I would have used back then, I wouldn't dream of using now with the client group that I like to specialize in now.
That's looking back from now to then, which is a jump. But when in 1992 you did the qualification,
Yeah.
during that process, what did that what did that reinforce that you were already doing well, and what did it make you reconsider? Because that would have been a course based on the pretense that you're working with sort of health related fitness clients as
Yeah.
opposed to athletes. So what was reinforced and what was new? What made you look at things differently?
I think that's a lovely question. I think the reinforcement of the preparation and the ending of the session was reinforced. What I learnt was, as you said, about health related exercise. And back then, and I don't want to be one of those people on a podcast who say, oh, it was much better back in the day. But back then, in terms of understanding a rate of progression that was safe and effective, as well as individualized and appropriate, I learned a lot about that on my first course, as well as putting some of the science behind what I was already doing.
Would it have been around this time then, if this was your first qualification that was fitness related? Is that where you really got that taste that you have for science? Because even now you love to read. I don't think we've ever had a phone call where you've not told me about a research paper or article or
Yeah, around that time, yeah, I did start to very much enjoy reading. But even back then, yes, I would feel guilty if I didn't pick up an article or a book around the science of fitness and health and fitness. But I was also reading around other aspects of fitness in terms of interaction and empathy and all of those things. And I think I was very fortunate back then of the original training provider that I trained with, and the sort of people that I bumped into at YMCA Club over those initial 3 or 4 years, and how they influenced me, and probably their influences are still around.
When you say their influence, is that specifically with regards to the empathetic side of what we do, as opposed to the physiological?
Yeah, I think it is. And as well, I think the ethos of the YMCA, the club, also rubbed off on me, that it was about the community around you. It was about, and that ethos, that it wasn't about a trend that was trendy somewhere in America or somewhere in Europe. It was purely about the community around you, and the people who went to that club. And I think that still rubs off on me now, to be fair.
So having that introduced to you, and you clearly were very open to that very early on. Is that what influenced the decision, or when the opportunity presented itself, to take up a role in teaching
Yeah,
as a tutor? I mean,
I never went on my first course ever to get into tutoring. When I observed the tutors back then delivering, there were some skills and some thought processes and some behaviours that I said, you know what, I'd like to learn how to do those. Definitely. I didn't know how good I would be, or if I know now how long the process was to actually be left on your own in a room with students from the YMCA, I probably wouldn't have started it. But no, I definitely was influenced a lot by all of the tutors back then. Yeah, definitely.
and I relate to that. I don't know if I can find a word to say quite how enough I relate to that, because my experience was the same. But where there was a difference is that one of those tutors for me was you, and I know what it's like to look at someone and think, not only is that the level with regards to professionality and the ability to teach, but there's something that these people are operating on another level in terms of their motivation. You used the word actually early on, but we had a really good conversation about this the other day. It's a word that we often use, the word passion, but actually you think it's not passion, it's something else. And I
Yeah,
think that's what was in that's what we both observed.
I do agree. And I've just finished a book now. In fact, I'm just going to turn behind me and look on my bookshelf. And yeah, it's a lovely book that I just finished reading, and really sums up a hell of a lot of thoughts that have been flooding around in my head. And it's a book by Cal, and I think his name's Haywood. And he's done a number of books. He's done a book called Deep Learning or Deep Work, where he talks about the importance of deliberate practice. And that's something that a lot of, over the last 10 years, a lot of people have spoken about. Malcolm Gladwell and Matthew Syed, the Times journalist, if he still works for the Times, have spoken about this deliberate practice. And this Cal Haywood talks about developing career capital. And these aren't my words. And if anyone is listening to this, but believe me, I'm just saying it as it is in the book, he's talking about career capital. And it really does resonate with our industry a lot. If you want to be unique and if you want to be different, it is about just building up this career capital of knowledge, skills, and behaviours in a specific context. But he also argues, which I found fascinating, and I'm sorry again, I've come at it from a different angle, that actually following your passions is not appropriate. And what you do is you find something that you love or you find interesting, you work hard at it, you build up your career capital, you become unique, you become different, you become rare, but it's actually the love of doing it that is the motivational thing and not the passion. And he sums it up really well, as if to say that someone who is passionate about something, the question they ask themselves is, what's in it for me? But someone who loves what they do, they say, what can I give to others? And I think that that's what I saw in everyone when I went to YMCA Club for the first time back in 1992, is that actually they weren't in it for anyone else apart from giving something to other people. And coming from a background of sport where you were totally focused on yourself, and I just found that just a breath of fresh air.
Because in sport, winning is very clearly defined as getting to the end first, and there's reward for that. Whereas the people that we were presented with the YMCA were playing a different game that didn't have that finish point. They just wanted they wanted the people around to be winners.
Yeah, they wanted what was best for the learner, and you know, I just found that at the time a total breath of fresh air. Really, honestly.
Just replacing the word passion with love completely reframes the way I look back at the experiences I've had, and it makes even more sense.
Yeah, just to recap that. Yeah, this is just a book that I've read. These aren't my ideas. I don't want to claim them as being my own, but I do think it is about falling in love with something. It's like a relationship. You know, how many relationships that start on passion actually are long lasting? You know, but relationships that you work hard at and you fall in love with, they stay around for a long time.
And when you talk about career capital, how have you read that and connected it to our industry?
I think it goes back to it's a lovely question, and it's caught me on the hop a bit. There's a lot of people, Matthew Syed, Gladwell, they call it the 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. Whether it was actually 10,000 hours is debatable. And when you start that 10,000 hours is also debatable. There's a lovely book out there by David Epstein, who wrote the book Sports Gene, which I really enjoyed. And he had a book out early last year called Range, where he says that you don't have to start your specific practice until a little bit later in life. But anyone who is successful has done a lot of deliberate practice. So what I suppose I mean by career capital are individuals who have, in our industry, done some sort of apprenticeship. They've entered the industry, they have worked, and I take it from my point of view, they've worked on the gym floor. There's been someone around them who took them under their wing, gave them feedback. That feedback was almost instantaneous. There were things that they commented on that you did well and things that you need to work on. And then even back in the day, you know, you were thinking about, it wasn't called CPD back then. It was just like additional courses. You thought, what other course am I going to go on? Why is that important to me? Why is that important to the people that I want to teach, more importantly? Yeah, it's about that. I mean, even back in the day, Paul, in terms of career capital, when I was teaching voluntarily at Central YMCA, the club, once a month, someone would watch your class and give you feedback. And I still have that feedback somewhere. I mean, that's unheard of now. I'd passed my qualification and someone took the time once a month to watch my class and give me feedback. I don't think I would be talking to you on this podcast now if people hadn't have done that.
I can accept that because I feel very much the same way. And the things you needed to be fed in order to, I don't know, develop or attain career capital.
Yeah. It's like lifelong, I suppose lifelong learning.
Part of the process.
Yeah, lifelong learning. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's just dawned on me. But lifelong learning could be considered to be career capital.
But we didn't have to be as proactive as you would have to be now because it was built into processes and protocols. As you've explained, that being at the Y, you'd have people come and watch you and give you feedback. And though you would welcome that and act on that, and I think that reflects on you. Ultimately, it happened anyway, whether you asked for it or not.
Yeah, it would have done. Yeah. Whereas, you know, I don't mean to. It just seems that our industry is very busy at the moment, or was before. We're in the current situation now, and hopefully we'll come out of that, and we'll learn a lot from it, and we'll come out from the situation that we're currently in. Everyone in our industry just seems far too busy to truly invest in themselves or to support others. And I may be wrong, and I'm probably very wrong. There are probably some wonderful people in the industry who I've just not met because I'm not that sociable, to be quite honest. But it does seem that a lot of people are just far too busy.
Busy, but do you think maybe also through choice isolated, because the way in now is different? It was appreciate our experiences are slightly different from each other's, but when I entered the industry, I became a gym instructor, and I was a gym instructor for many years, working full time in a gym. And then there were a number of qualifications and courses and workshops over again another period of years until I achieved all that needed to be, or all that was required to be called a personal trainer. Now, however, you become a personal trainer very quickly, and then you could be working on your own indefinitely, whether you're visiting people, in their homes, or you've got a studio set up at your home, or an external studio. We're not around as many people as we used to be.
No, no, most definitely that's true. I mean, and when I started, there was no gym instructor qualification. You did weight training, both selectorized equipment, free weights, and I think there was a selection of body weight. And we did circuit training. The gym instructor course didn't come along till much later. So I started in my career, one as a gym instructor doing inductions and supporting people within that environment, as well as teaching classes, because that was what the qualification allowed me to do. And it wasn't till much later the cardiovascular element brought into the qualification, and the circuit training bit, or the group teaching as they now call it, was taken out.
Do you think when the qualification was the gym instructor qualification was introduced, did it reflect the needs of the gym? God, this is a terrible question. Did it reflect the needs of the gym user, the member at that time, and the gym environment and the role of the instructor? Was it an appropriate course for everybody involved at that time? If that question doesn't make sense, I'll have another go at it.
No, the gym was evolving at that time, most definitely. And
Mm.
I do remember seeing the growth of what we have now. I remember seeing that. And I do remember seeing cross trainers and bikes coming onto the gym floor. So there was definitely a need to look at how they work, how we would teach someone in terms of raising their confidence and competence. So they were happy on it in terms of using that piece of equipment, or at least experimenting with it to see if they did like it and could fall in love with it. So I did think that was a vital change. In hindsight, looking back on it, as an industry, we should never have got rid of the group teaching element ever, because if you can teach a group, teaching one-to-one becomes easier. Whereas if you're a one-to-one teacher and then you have to learn about teaching groups, I think that way round is more challenging, shall we say, and that is the personal view for anyone who's listening in on this. But there was a need to do it, most definitely. Certainly in the gyms where I was working, we moved from having just one treadmill in the corner to start having a range of equipment. I didn't know how to use it, and it was only that I hung around with people who writing courses in terms of how to use it that I learned how to use it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, it does. Because the qualifications have, I don't know if evolved is the word, but they've definitely been played with. Things have been added and taken away in the time since the original one. And I wonder how well the qualification has or does map to the ever changing needs of the member and the instructor, and if there are points where they've been really close in marrying up, and if there are other points where they maybe seem more far apart.
Wow. So we've been on this call now for nearly half an hour, and that is really the killer question, that, isn't it? I've been, during this period of time, I have been doing a lot of reading around the current syllabus, and I know we've had conversations about that. If I'm honest with you, I think that the current syllabus, if delivered correctly, is a great starting point. I really do. It's not the end point, but in terms of entering the industry and having a good understanding, it's a great starting point. But then that depends upon, it is a number of other factors. It is the amount of time that is dedicated to being able to not just teach people, but for them to experience the syllabus and to be able to put it into a context of who the syllabus is aimed at as an end user. It's also giving the learner enough practice time to assimilate the knowledge, skills, and behaviours necessary. So when they do go out in the industry, they do feel confident and competent about doing a job. Those are my feelings. I do feel that the current syllabus does that. It's not the end point. I do think that there's enough in there to actually give an individual a good start in the industry.
Is then, because I think I'd have to agree in terms of the syllabus and what it could enable somebody
Yes,
to do.
that's the word, could.
And so my concern is I don't believe it does more often than not enable people to do what it wants to. And you mentioned time. I think time is the greatest limiting factor.
Well, it comes back to career capital, doesn't it? It comes back to, have they had enough practice to actually start to fall in love with the job? And then is that building the firm foundations that they can then go away and start to think, well, who am I? What do I want to say in this industry to other people safely and effectively? I think you've hit the nail on the head. It doesn't do that because of time.
And so the questions that you're asking right now, they're the ones that are not being asked or explored in a qualification because they're not linked to the assessment. And I really feel uncomfortable at the moment that because of those time constraints, which exist because of competition, because you're allowed to deliver it very, very fast. And so, of course, everybody else does. And that affects the price. So the quicker and cheaper things are, it's very hard to go in at our qualification will take this long and cost this much. So because people are allowed to create courses that are so short, no matter what's in the syllabus or what makes up the syllabus, it becomes an assessment driven process. And I'm uncomfortable with that.
No, I agree. I suppose I'm outside of that for a little while. I haven't delivered a level 2 qualification since the end of the summer in 2019 when I was doing some work for a local authority in the northwest, and they asked myself and a couple of colleagues to go in and deliver what we felt was an over an appropriate time frame, which was lovely. And then before that, it's when you and I both used to work for the Soho Gyms Academy, where we were given a lot of leeway in terms of time to deliver and practice on that one, which I understand is not the current way of doing things, like you said, because of the competition. You know, it goes back to that, and I don't know if it does come from NLP, and I've just made a note of it now. It goes back to those 4 levels of learning, doesn't it? It goes back to being unconsciously incompetent or consciously incompetent to consciously competent and then to unconsciously competent. And you'd like to think that anyone who had passed the qualification had got to level 3, which was consciously competent. And then they could start to develop themselves with the help of people around them to move on or unlearn and then relearn again, which a lot of adult learning is. I mean, let's remember that a lot of people think that adult learning is not learning. They reckon it's unlearning, and learning new stuff. Again, that's about career capital as well.
And that's not something that can be delivered quickly, although it could just be a handful of conversations or sessions on a course to get those, to say the words regarding that kind of thing. But it takes time for someone to be comfortable enough to allow themselves to revisit the understandings they already feel they have, and to allow themselves to consider alternate opinions, theories, ideas. And it's not even about the mechanics of, like, can I squeeze all these sessions in on a timetable? It's that if it is too fast, we don't create an environment for that individual or an experience for that individual to adapt emotionally and mentally, perhaps.
No, we don't. We no, spot on. We don't do any of that. because our learners who come on the courses now, because of the time constraints, rightly or wrongly, they're not allowed to learn and unlearn and develop their skills. And then I suppose when they go out and work on the gym floor, because they've not had that experience, then maybe they don't allow the end user, the exerciser, to have that experience. I don't know. Perhaps I'm speaking out of turn now.
No. I think you're right, because it's an experience you have to be led through, not forced to face or experience. It's a guided process.
That comes back to, I mean, you could argue that now what we're talking about is the difference between teaching and coaching. You know, when I'm on a course, there is an element of teaching a learner that they have to learn about the exercises. They have to learn about how a piece of selectorized equipment is set up, how a treadmill works. They have to learn about how adults learn. So it's about teaching them. But then once they are qualified and they do go out, should my role then become more of a coaching role than a teaching role, where it's about them developing their selves and having the awareness of who they are and who they want to be and what they want to offer the fitness industry? And does it become more about coaching than teaching? Because I do believe on the gym floor that there is a place for both, and coaching and teaching, as I understand it, are two very, very different skills. Teaching is about being safe and effective.
So I was going to say, for people listening, as an example, if you give us maybe a piece of equipment.
Yeah. So if someone who was a returning exerciser, and I don't call anyone a beginner or new to exercise, because at some point in someone's life they have already tried it, right? So it's a returning exerciser. If they come to the facility and they are unfamiliar with a leg extension or a leg curl, and I'm going to say a single joint exercise just to upset those functional people who are listening in right now, I would have to go through and I would teach them. And teaching is about them feeling confident to set the bit of equipment up and feeling confident that they can set it up, and confident that they could come in and do that the next time for themselves. That is teaching. Whereas coaching is about developing their performance. It's about raising their self-belief. It's about moving on, learning about movement, having a level of self-awareness, taking responsibility. That's what coaching is. And that's not about teaching anymore. That's about asking the right questions at the right time. So they have to think about the answers for themselves. And that's when you build independence. And that's what it's got to be about. It's got to be about people feeling they are independent. They are in control. It's not about, what's the word I'm looking for? It's about self-belief. It's about self-confidence. That's what coaching is about. And that's where we all should be trying to take. Yeah, they might want to come to a class with me and they might want to do a class, but I shouldn't be striving. People who come and train with me shouldn't be striving for esteem from me. Right? They should be towards self-esteem and self-confidence and being empowered.
Coach, well, part of coaching then is to encourage that.
Moving away from getting esteem from others, and moving towards more, not self-esteem, but more self-confidence. That I do know. I'm gonna go and ask Keith about what he thinks about this exercise and is it worthwhile doing. But I'm going to throw it back and say, where are you going? What's the end outcome? How often are you training a week? What does it feel like when you're doing it? Is there another exercise we could try that might be better? I want the answer to come from them.
And that answer has to be, we had a lovely conversation the other day about truth, and they have to tell themselves the truth. They have to be honest with themselves. And I think that underpins somebody's confidence. And I can't work out which way round it is. I think if you tell yourself the truth, that will have an impact on your confidence. And yet you do need a certain degree of confidence in order to tell yourself the truth. So I can't work out which underpins the other. But
it's like what comes first, stroke volume or cardiac output, isn't it? Does heart rate decrease, so cardiac output goes up, or does cardiac output go up so heart rate can decrease? It's the chicken or the egg, isn't it? Perhaps they both come together.
Yeah, maybe they do, and I think that might be maybe on an individual basis you would make that decision when coaching somebody as to which you feel is whether you think they're more ready for the chicken or the egg. But
is it down to me to ask the right questions so they decide?
Yeah. I think so.
It's not about me in the end. Down to me to ask the right questions.
Yeah, teaching is very much about the thing, isn't it?
And that's
you gave
important.
the example of
and for anyone listening on this call, you know, my major role as a gym instructor is to teach people safe and effective technique. But once they've got that,
the teaching is the how, isn't it? It's the how.
Yeah.
And they need to know the how in order for it to be safe and effective. But your coaching is to give them a why.
Yeah.
And a want and a desire and as you say, an independence.
And a lot of stuff with our so-called CPD, and I don't mean so-called because I'm taking liberties out of it, I just mean that's what it's called at the moment, is all about more and more content, so there's more and more teaching. Is CPD about that, or is CPD moving in a different direction to say, no, I've got enough content now, I'm going to move down a coaching route. I'm going to be totally different in the way that I approach my clients and how they go about developing, rather than just constantly on this loop of it's all about content.
I would maybe liken that, and you're welcome to argue if I've misunderstood, but the analogy I sometimes use is a chef in a kitchen given a finite amount of food and utensils and appliances, and being able to come up with many dishes using the same stuff, as opposed to just being someone in a kitchen with every utensil and every appliance and every week getting new and more ingredients. It's learning to be a better chef that will lead to better meals, not just learning to buy new produce and having more ingredients.
No, agreed. And that could be career capital. You know, that could come down again to, you know, what we were speaking about before.
And does that come from that perhaps a lack of self-confidence where the instructor feels that they need to know more, they need more content in order for a bit of self-validation? I'm not as good as I need to be because I don't know enough.
Well, I think that's a lovely question. It is certainly a confidence thing. I am, and I hate to bring it back to me and how I think about it. It's impossible to know everything. We've known each other for a long time now, and we work for the same. We've worked for the same people, and there have been times where a day of training has come up, and it's not for me. I do not have the skill set to deliver that training day. So I phoned you up and I said, do you want that training day? One, because it's all about the end user and them getting the most out of the day. And they would get more out of the day if you delivered it, because that's your thing. And I'm not that confident with it. But it took me ages to get to that point to think, I don't need to know everything to be successful. And we've all got a different view on what success is to be successful in this industry. And I think there's a lot of factors that lead people to believe that they have to know everything. That's not the case moving forward.
No, I think you're
right. For you to be rare and unique and different, there are things I am quite comfortable when I go training with my friends that there are people in that gym who do not work in the fitness industry who know more than me. I am quite comfortable with that because I'm employed to do a certain, well, hopefully I'm employed to do a certain thing. To get to that point where you think, do you know what? If someone asked me to take a class for a rugby group or a hockey team or a netball team, I wouldn't do it because it's not for me. So it is about confidence. Does that answer the question, or have I just rambled on for 2 minutes?
No, it does. It does. No, it does ask the question, and I think it also underlines that the goal really is about being honest with you. So you've arrived at a point where you have the confidence to be honest with yourself and understand what you do and what you do well and what you do differently. Someone may well know more than you do in the gym about.
I'm quite comfortable, mate.
Stuff.
I don't mean to interrupt. I think, you know, before all this current situation happened, I was going to the gym 3 mornings a week with a very good friend. We know him. And I used to look around me and think, wow, I reckon there's about 30% of people in here who actually know more than me about certain things in fitness. And do you know what? That didn't upset me in the slightest.
But that's because you know what you do, and what you do is enable other people to apply the knowledge that they need to have. Whereas the people you've seen in the gym that may well know more than you do not have the skills or the ability to help others apply that. Maybe they can't even apply it themselves to somebody else, which is not because they're not good enough. It's because it's just not what they do. It's not their thing. In the same way that whatever their thing is maybe not your thing. And
No,
I think that does take some confidence to say this is my thing. This is where it makes me. I don't know if it's uncomfortable or sad or nervous, but I find that more and more when it's something fitness related, people have to add a caveat. There has to be I've just been for a run today, wasn't my best effort, or not been the same since the injury, or I'm a bit heavier than normal at the minute, or didn't get there's always a caveat. They can't celebrate the achievement. And the achievement is huge. They've just been for a run while almost everyone else in the country is probably sat at home. They've just done something that I think deserves recognition. And they can't recognise their own achievement because they're worried about it not matching up to other people's.
I think that's lovely, and I know he's quite controversial in some areas. I don't think he is controversial. I think he's quite. He sits in a good place for me, Dr. Jordan Peterson, and I know that there are certain aspects of society and academia who do question what he does, and I know he relishes that questioning. But in his book, The 12 Rules of Life, he says that you judge yourself based on who you were yesterday and not on who someone else is. And I think a lot of more people in our industry have got to start passing that on to others that they teaching and interacting with, that you judge yourself on who you are yesterday. My brother, for instance, is not an exerciser at all. Speaking to him in the summer, we went out for a coffee, and he had a copy of Men's Health in the car, right? I said to him, oh, this is what you're reading. He said, I'm thinking about being healthier. And I just thought, wow, he's thinking about being healthier, and he has gone out to a newsagent's and bought and actually done a behaviour. He has actually behaved in a way by buying this magazine, and clearly the magazine had been read, right? Because it looked as if it has been read. To certain people in our industry, perhaps, what's the importance of that? But to me, my brother had started a behaviour that only is praise. And a few months later, he's joined a gym, and for the last couple of months, he's gone regularly, and he's in that place at the moment where he is exploring the facility and finding out what he likes when he likes to go. I don't think we celebrate that enough. And my point is that I could have said, "Oh, don't read Men's Health," but that's not the point.
And I think that happens, doesn't it? Because it becomes the conflict exists between you as the fitnesser and the content of that magazine, and you discount.
Yeah.
In this case, your brother, and I think the industry often does that. Often forgets the human side.
If I'm doing an induction, I don't have to please. If I'm doing an induction as a gym instructor, I don't have to please any other gym instructor on that floor. If that member walks on the treadmill for 20 minutes and leaves and comes back with a smile on their face, I've done my job.
Done.
And I just think with all these trends and all this stuff that's going on, nothing's ever good enough now. Well, I think we forget the journey that we've been on to get to that place to begin with, and we forget that everyone else has a totally different perception. Yeah, what do they say? The wood is not the trees, the music is not the score. Yeah. Everyone has their own perception of what the fitness industry is, and I do not have to please anyone else. As long as that session is safe, as long as that session has been effective, And as long as that member comes back with a smile on their face, and the only question I have to ask at the end of each session is there anything else you'd like to try next time? What did you enjoy? What didn't you enjoy? What could we do more of? What could we do less of together? Is there anything else you'd like to try? You know, it has to be more about the end user. So the question to my brother was, "Oh, what did you learn from reading this?
Brilliant.
What interests you?" Because the day before, the week before, he'd not gone into WH Smith's to buy that magazine. Yet all of a sudden, he's gone in there and bought a magazine. If that's the place he wants to start, that's fine by me.
And there's an experience there. There's a putting a magazine on the counter in the shop that very clearly says what it is and has the picture it has. And there is a, we might take that for granted because it's what we do, but that is a statement. That is a...
Yeah. Well, how many times do you go into WH Smith's and pick the magazine off the shelf and have a look at it and then put it back and walk out? And then he took one stage further and then he went to the counter and bought it and then he started reading it. If that's the start of his journey, I'm happy with that. Did we go off? Did I just take us off course there? I don't know. But
no, I don't think you did.
Everyone has a different... I think everyone has a different context of what the world is and what fitness is, and sometimes.
But what isn't different is our goal, which is what you've said, is that if that member leads feeling confident, feeling valued, feeling like they've enjoyed what they did, and feeling like they want to do it again, that's the goal, I believe, that we should all have for all of our clients and members. How we arrive at that goal should be different and will be different for all of them. But that is the goal. The context for them is totally different and unique. But for us, that would it be fair to say that is our standard, or ought to be?
Definitely. The standard for me is creating a consistency of behaviour. Far too many people, and I'm going to get on my high horse now, and it's taken nearly an hour and a half to do that. Every single magazine I pick up, every single syllabus I read, it's all about progression. Progression. No, it's not. The key to success for both a facility operator, the key to success for a PT, and the key to success for the most important person, the end user, is not about progression. It's about consistency of behaviour. Consistency of behaviour is key for the facility and the personal trainer, because we know that consistency of behaviour is about adherence, and adherence is one of the influencing factors to retention. And consistency of behaviour for the end user is the only way they're going to achieve their goal. Because if they are only coming once or twice a week, progression will be really slow. It's about consistency of behaviour, and the whole industry, from my point of view, everything I read is about progression, harder, faster, higher. But it's not. It's got to be about consistency of behaviour. That's the key to success.
And is that supported, do you think, by thinking beyond the workout? So I'm aware that the industry is very focused on the workout and the in the moment experience, but you often talk about what you call post exercise cognitions and the experience after the experience.
Yeah.
Do we need to think more about that?
Every exercise that you do, every interaction has three possibilities. It either moves a relationship forward, keeps a relationship in the same place, or it moves a relationship backwards. So as someone working on the gym floor, first of all, I need to be cognizant of that a smile, a nod, a wave, a hello, right, is either going to move that relationship forward or maintain it. Those are good outcomes. But also my behaviours, if not appropriate, might take that relationship back. And then when I'm writing a workout or delivering a session, I have to think about how every single exercise affects that individual, both physiologically and psychologically. It's not just about the phys. Too many people think, yeah, do that because I've been told if I do that, that will lead to that. But if by doing that, that leads to any sort of discomfort and makes that member feel ugly, awkward, or uncomfortable, they are not coming back. And we think too much about the physiology and not enough about the psychology. There are feelings associated with physiology, breathlessness, slight discomfort, etc. And there are feelings related to the psychology, making people feel ugly, awkward, or uncomfortable. And if our industry, if facilities want to succeed and members want to succeed and the trainer wants to succeed, it's about consistency and not progression, because we're talking about the general population. And you've got to think about how every interaction and how every exercise affects each individual, both physiologically and psychologically. Have I rambled on there?
No, I think it's been very lovely.
And the thoughts that we have after everything, I mean, memory is everything. What does Tennessee Williams say? That everything in life is memory, apart from the fleeting second that you've experienced it. Everything is memory. There's the now, and then that now is now memory. Tennessee Williams says something around that. We rate our experiences based on memory, based on how it makes us feel. Maya Angelou, you know, people will never forget the way you make them feel. Not just post-session thoughts, but every interaction thoughts affect someone's behaviour. If I'd have said something to my brother in his car about men's health that wasn't positive, that could have ended his progression.
So we need to think about we do need to think about creating great experiences for our members and our clients.
Yeah.
Equally important is to think about how we can create great memories and associations for them.
And some people would argue that experiences are inherently personal, so they are memories. But yeah, you could argue that they're different and they're the same. I would agree. It's about the memories. The exercise does not bring them back. There is no research ever out there, to my knowledge, that says you do this exercise and someone will come back. They come back because of the memories, the experience. I can't guarantee that a kettlebell swing, even if I'd done it correctly, would drive someone back to the facility. But how I deliver that in relation to the individual that's standing in front of me.
So again, it's not content, it's context.
It's context. Yeah. Spot on. It's taken us an hour and a half to get there, and you said it. It's context.
I'm pretty sure you said it.
It is. It's not the kettlebell swing in itself. It's how that kettlebell swing is delivered. If it's part of a session, how was it introduced? Where did it come in that session? How did you go about praising them? How did you go about correcting them? How did you go about building their confidence? What did you say? How much did you say? How much did you reinforce it with a demonstration? When you did that demonstration, where did you stand? Where did you position yourself? Yeah, how much eye contact did you make? How personal did you make that interaction within a group setting? It's got nothing to do with the exercises whatsoever. Yet our whole industry is obsessed with the exercises. Fitness is not what we do. Fitness is not the product. The customer is the product, because they are the ones that change because of the environments that we create. The customer is the product, not fitness. Fitness is free. I can get fitness anywhere. I don't have to pay for it. In fact, it's against my human rights to pay for fitness. Yeah, fitness is not the product of the fitness industry. People are the product, because they are the product of the environments that we create in terms of building their confidence and competence, building self-belief and self-confidence so they can be independent.
I'm as sold as sold can be, and I've been sold for a long time. And
that's not to say that I don't need to learn about content. And we discussed the other day how I found an article from 2001 written by the great Mel Sith around functional training. That's not to say that I don't read around content. Of course I do.
But we've got to read beyond content. There's a huge percentage of the population that are not interested in what we do, but are interested in what we can do.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, but yeah, if we think that fitness is our product, we're in trouble. So this is a fitness podcast where I've slagged off fitness.
No, I don't think you have. I think
it has to be safe and effective. It has to be safe, it has to be effective, and it has to be individualized.
Yeah, but it also has to be evaluated. I don't think you've slagged anything off. I think if we don't look at what we do and what we've done honestly and maybe consider the bits that we're not doing as well and how we can do them better, I think that's we'd be disingenuous as practitioners. I think very clearly comes from what you're saying, comes from a place of wanting, you clearly want to be better, and you clearly want the rest of us to be better, and you want the experience to be better. So I don't take, I don't agree at all that anything's been slagged off.
It has to be about the end user. I don't think we focus on the end user enough. I think we think about the customer enough. I would even go so far as to say, and be really controversial, I don't think we employ the right people. And I would put myself into that category. Going back to what we said originally, I came from a background of sport, and the only thing that changed me was the environment that I was fortunate enough to be educated in was not about sport. It was about community, and it was about everyone getting the opportunity to be successful in however they saw that, and raising their own self-belief that they could be successful.
But you now have those same views. So I would challenge that. I would say that you are exactly the right person. You were the right person, and you got the right support.
Yeah, but when I talk to people who come on courses and they say, I was good at sport, so I think I'm going to make a good PT.
But it makes sense that's the type of person it will attract.
Yeah, but actually, is that the person that the vast majority of the end users want?
Not in the raw. No,
that's it. Not in the raw.
As they are.
That's a lovely point. Not in the raw.
But they're exactly the people that have a love for what they do.
Yeah,
like you did. That with the right support and people around them, and the time invested in them to help them understand what it is that they love and understand how to share it and how to encourage other people to find the things that they love. With that investment, I think they're exactly the right people, but that it's the investment that I think that's where we fail people. It's not that the wrong people are coming into the industry. It's that we're not giving them what they deserve in regards to education, so that they can then move forward and support others.
You've put it beautifully. That they don't get the time invested into them, that then they can go out and be successful themselves. And that's just the nature of where we are right now, I think, as an industry. Yeah. A shame, really, when you consider that when I joined the industry, it was actually a 2-week intensive. It was 7 days, a week off, and then another 6 days. And even if you go back to how we did it at Soho Gyms, I think we at least got 8 days with them on the gym instructor course, and that was blended learning. And now I see, or I hear, that unfortunately the learner is not getting enough time to feel comfortable with those skills.
I agree, but I also feel very privileged that we exist in a time when there have never been, I believe, more outstanding fitness professionals. I believe that those that have had, I think the opportunity is rarer. I think that's the sad part. The opportunity is rarer, but those that have had it, we've never had better fitness professionals than we have right now. But I think that the spectrum is bigger than it's ever been. I think that years ago there was a standard that was high and most people were there. There is now a spectrum that includes people that are nowhere near there, that the absolute, the other end. But I do believe there is another group that really are at the top, and there's some really exciting people and people that are incredibly proactive in their professional and personal development.
Oh no, agreed. No, without a shadow of a doubt. And perhaps I've been rude in the last half an hour about certain things, but no, there are some lovely teachers out there, who I just admire greatly in terms of what they're trying to do. No, I would agree,
but there should be more. That's the thorn in my craw. Is that the phrase? I've never said it before, but that's the bit that frustrates. There should be more, and I feel like we've let some people down, but I don't feel like you've let us down today, and I'm very grateful for not only your giving up the time to talk to us on the actual podcast, but the incredible patience pre-podcast when things weren't going quite as well from a technology point of view while we were trying to get set up. Because we've just been talking about post-exercise cognitions and memories. is there something that you might like to leave people with, a piece of advice or a suggestion or recommendation? You've given us a couple of books already, or maybe just an illustration of the type of post experience, thoughts and feelings they might have from listening to the conversation today.
I hope I've not upset anyone on the call in terms of the thoughts I have. You are right. There are some great trainers out there, and the people we know personally that are outstanding at what they do. Know who. I know it's an old cliche, but for anyone listening to this who wants to progress in the industry, know who you are, understand your values and beliefs, understand your story, understand your audience. Who are you going after? It's impossible to please everyone. And one of the old sayings is, I don't know the key to success, but the key to failure is trying to please everyone. That's not saying not to be polite with everyone, but you cannot please everyone. Know your audience. Who are you targeting as a trainer? Who are the sorts of people that you want to come to your classes? Who are the sorts of people who you feel might not appreciate your teaching? There are hundreds of thousands of people out there who don't appreciate a class that I teach. And I fully respect that. But as Simon Sinek says on one of his YouTube clips, I don't need everyone to like what I do to be successful. I just need the people who like what I like to do to be successful. So know your audience, understand who you are, understand your beliefs and values, and then understand your material. And I know I've been quite rude about content on this podcast in terms of, but you do need to know your content. If you are using a piece of equipment, you know how to use that piece of equipment inside out and backwards, upside down, because at the end of the day, fundamentally, it is about being safe and effective and making sure that that session or that workout is individualized. And I don't know which one of those comes first, second or third, but I do think those are the important ingredients. Who's the audience? As an instructor, what are your beliefs and values? What's your story? And know and understand fully the material that you're using. As you said earlier on, you don't need to know all the material. I do not know how to use an Olympic bar apart from bent over row and bicep curl. But it's not a bit of equipment that my audience would appreciate. I don't need to know all of the material, but I need to know the material that please my audience.
I don't know if that was planned or not. That was a proper Hollywood finish. That was lovely. Thank you very much.
Really?
Well, yeah, I loved it.
Sorry about that, but those are the 3 rules, and
Nice.
I didn't come up with those rules at all. Those are someone else's rules. A few, nothing that I've said on this podcast is just other people and how I've interpreted what other people have said. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to this, look outside the industry for stuff. Look what other industries are using to be successful and how could we use that in our industry. We are too insular. What are other people doing?
I couldn't agree more. And I think it'd be lovely to get you back on in the future and explore that. I think that's worth more than a passing comment. I think it'd be nice to explore that. I will leave it at that, saying that I thank you very much again, but I really look forward to our next conversation.
Well, you take care, mate. Stay safe, and I hope to see you soon.
Weapons activated. Goodbye.